Hey there, members of the Night Crew, and folks who just love horror. Welcome to the Night Crew podcast, where shadows breathe and monsters listen. This is the podcast where we get cozy with the creepy, the frightening, and the just plain undead. I'm your host, Brad Ricks. On today's episode, I sat down with author Pamela K. Kinney. She writes both fiction and nonfiction, focusing on Appalachian horror. We talk about writing fiction versus nonfiction, handling some bad reviews, and her upcoming novel, Nowhere Land. Into the studio we go. All right, so today I'm excited to welcome Pamela K. Kinney with me in the virtual studio. So, Pamela, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, it's pleasure to have you on. Well, so I always like to start off with just that normal, wonderful, question that all of us as writers end up getting, which is tell me about your writing career. Kind of how long you've been writing. What was your first book? Just tell me a little bit about you and your writing journey.
Well, actually, I started writing on my own for fun as an 8-year-old. So, yeah, I've always had an imagination. Back then, though, it was science fiction and animal stories, and I won't say what the aliens look like, but that was an 8-year-old girl back in the 60s, right? But later on, I would do that in classes. I wanted to write stories and all that. So my teachers got used to it. And I actually had my mother one time had to take me to the PTA, gave me an award for all that, and stuff like that. But I got published when I was 17. Well, I just hadn't graduated high school yet, with 3 poems in a magazine in LA, Los Angeles, called Hyacinths and Biscuits. So, and I got paid for each. And this was in
awesome.
72 when at 18, I couldn't get a job because I was under 18 and I was 17. He said, "Oh, no, you can't. We don't hire you. You have to be 18. I was so frustrated. I didn't have getting ready to graduate. And I thought, oh, heck, I'll write 3 poems. They're not that hard. And I did it. And they gave me a contract and everything. And then a few months later, they published 3 more of mine. And I got paid $5 a poem. And that's pretty good for 17-year-old girl. But,
I have short stories even today that, when they get published, it's like you were included in the anthology. Here's $20. So, so $5 then, compared, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. It was a professional magazine in Los Angeles, but I got articles published and stuff like that over the years. And then, I was stupid. I would tell my young self, now, don't go with that weird plan you had in your head that while you're in college, we'll start with the poetry and then the stories and da. I said, just write the gosh darn novel. There wasn't all that many writers back then, per se. There was no self-publish other than the few that would pay some big rip-off place to make them a lot of books that they couldn't sell out of the back of their trunk. And I probably could have done it. I was pretty good A. In fact, in college, I was in the way above normal English class. I was really good in that, but I didn't. And then by the time I started doing stories, it was this century. And I had decided to ask my husband, can I quit my job? And can I pursue acting and my writing again? And I thought the writing would take off first. So the acting actually took off, which is really bizarre, but yeah, but then the writing started, and I wrote some in one way, and then I wrote under a synonym, Sapphire Feline, which was paranormal romance, usually erotic. So one of them actually won an award, romance writers. And it was not that different than what I would write scary-wise in this side of me, and then I decided to go ahead and start pursuing, because I got a chance, couple of horror stories, but I also got a chance to write real ghost stories, nonfiction ghost books. And the editor that worked for it was part of the horror group. We were the Mid-Atlantic Horror Professionals. And said, did anybody want it? Because she's got the job working at Schiffer Publishing. I like to write real ghost stories. Well, I had heard some even women out in California about out here. And I decided ahead and I went ahead and looked up what a book proposal is, because that's totally a whole different spectrum than writing fiction, and learned how to do a proposal. See, I looked it all up and figured it out and submitted it. And I did Haunted Richmond, the first book. And then I had, after that, Haunted Virginia Legend, Myth and Truth Tales. After that, because it's easy being in-house, I did Virginia's Haunted Historic Triangle, the first Williamsburg, Yorktown, Jamestown, and other haunted location. That was the first book. And then Haunted Richmond, too. And then, of course, Paranormal Petersburg, Virginia, and the Tri-Cities area. Eventually, Virginia Haunted Historic Triangle went to second printing. It went that fast. In fact, it outbeats the Haunted Virginia books. And that one, and a lot of that also comprises with pictures. And there's ghost pictures in them. I learned a lot. I kind of grew up seeing things, and when a mother could have dreams that came true, she would tell me a couple of them that came true, considering a relative and all that, and a friend. So it wasn't anything shocking to me, but it was kind of nice to have, ghost pictures. And if you get them in color, they show better. And I'm supposed to have one in 27 Paranormal Appalachian Trail. So that's going to be the big one. Because that ended up with just the words 90,000. There was no way it's 14 states. This is 60,000. I said, that may be Virginia, but you got 14 freaking states, And I cut a lot of stuff out. So, but that's the nonfiction action. And that actually helps inspire me with stories like in Virginia, there's one in Haunted Virginia that's the Bunny Man. And he's in Fredericksburg. There's a Bunny Man Bridge, and he's supposedly a serial killer that dresses in a white bunny suit with a red hatchet. And of course, there's even been a librarian that lived up there. He grew up with everybody else. They all go see him on Halloween night. If you catches you, you're going to be dead, or all sorts of weird stuff. It's on forums and everywhere. And he tried to find out this guy really existed. I mean, urban legends are urban legends, but some are true. Everything has something. And all he could find, the basis in fact, actually started with the 70s, which is when all the stories started. Because there was 2 police reports. One, a guy in a white bunny suit with a hatchet threatening Air Force guy and his girlfriend in his car. They were talking. And then later on, a security guard at a housing development, a hatchet hit and bedded into by the house thing, so they didn't see so that was the only 2. So that's probably, somebody took that, was a future horror writer, let's be honest, got an idea. But I actually wrote a horror story and did get it published. Bunny Man's gonna get you, where the guy makes yard haunts every year. Well, he was fine when he was working, but he's unemployed. His wife is angry with him. She's the only one working. She's cheating on him, by the way. So there's all this stuff. His kids drive him crazy. They don't want to have nothing to do with something scary. And ends up, he gets possessed by the Bunny Man because he lives up in that area. And he gets a white suit and the hatch. It gets pretty. Sometimes I surprise myself when I get something that's really that downright creepy, but it ends up creepy. He turns
I always love a good...
Well, he turns everybody heads into jack-o'-lanterns, but that's okay.
Nice. So I do want to talk about your nonfiction a little bit, because a lot of the people that I end up chatting with, it's all, horror authors and stuff, and that's usually fiction. But I don't always get a nonfiction person. So just kind of talking about your nonfiction for a second. How do you go about, organizing and keeping up with like research and things like that for your nonfiction? Because I know it's a lot of research and a lot of things you typically have to go into that versus fiction writing. So how do you kind of keep up and organize?
Well, even fiction, sometimes if you've got to look up something that you don't know or area, but same thing. I buy books that have especially to do with the area and stuff, see what other people have. And then I also look online, because now we got online, you can find lots of things, even forums, like I said, for the Bunny Man of all places, and the Werewolf of Henrico, which is supposedly a real werewolf people have been seeing. And the forum gets more and more. So, and it got me so famous because I wrote the term Werewolf of Henrico instead of Werewolf of Bray Road. Werewolf of Henrico. That the famous lady that wrote the Werewolf of Bray Road wrote a book of American werewolves. She had that coined in the term for mine. So I said she had to read. At that time, it was Haunted Richmond, too, that had the book story, because that's in the Henrico area. And I do have a Werewolves, Dogmen, other Shapeshifters stalking North America nonfiction, too. And that's actually one of my best. People seem to like that stuff. So, but it's books online. That one especially had to be. There was no way I could get anywhere. It was the pandemic. So any pictures I got was locally. I did get when they opened up the zoo up here, the Timberwolf, take a picture of it. Anything otherwise than animals in the zoo or locally, I couldn't get to like Alaska for the Kushtaka and all that stuff like that. But I did get all my facts, and like someone who taught me that's all she does is write nonfiction. Just check your facts. So I did that a lot. The ghost books, same thing. You go out and take pictures. Of course, I started developing after the first book, Paranormal Investigations. I went to one group and I started digital recorder, which is good for actually recording interviews too, because the first time I was writing everything down, and trying to read your own writing is horrible. That, and then pictures, of course, you took that before. Then I got the EMF meter, and then I got my ghost box, which, by the way, does work, because I've gotten a lot of people say things were accurate out what was said through there, well known by fact historians and places I've been in. So that helps a lot. And people want to. I figure, what would I like to read? You know, you got the basic stuff from the books, like L.B. Taylor did here, or people they send stories, or the ones that do pictures only. But what about more? What about ghosts? What about your own experiences? You're going interviewing and all this stuff, yeah, and you're researching legends or you're researching historical facts, but what about your own experiences? And sometimes ghost stories aren't all written down somewhere. So the ghost box gets me to ask questions and see what answers. And I've gotten some creepy things.
Interesting. So, all right. And so you kind of, so as you're going through, are you a note taker as you're kind of reading through the different stuff to kind of how you want to organize the stuff that goes into your...
Yeah, it's different than writing fiction. You're writing straight from the beginning most of the time. I may write an ending to it. I know where I'm going. And I don't all use outlines. Outlines afterwards as they need. I never did that as a kid. I thought outlines were boring. That's just me. But I would write, except for a few things, like basically everybody's, in fiction, I write everybody's hair color, everything, because it drives me nuts. I used to review, so I can tell you when things that somebody accidentally forgot and that nobody realized, that even the editor, that the eyes change in color later in the book, and I look it back, I say, oh my gosh, it really is. I'm right. So I would write all that down. But for nonfiction, everything's one at a time, chapters. And then eventually I have to kind of figure in my head, how do I want it to organize in the contents, and doing that up, and where do I want everything to go? So that ends up at the end, put together. And then I'll go through edits with that all the way through 3 or 4 times. So, but I want to look at it, I separate them, because it's totally a different mindset than fiction. You want all the way from beginning to end usually. There, it's putting logically where you think you might want the book to look good. And of course, they're going to fix it too. I mean, Schiffer does it their way. I have another one coming out that they didn't at the time accept, because they said ghost books weren't selling, and then they kind of realized their mistake way later afterwards. And this book was took by a small press guy who still owes me for second years. So I was happy to get my rights back, and at least I got that. And my books I had bought, he almost thought he wasn't giving me my money either. And it sold well. So now the publisher does a lot of my fiction and does the werewolf book too, which is her bestseller. Is doing that one that's coming out this fall. But it's all about logically putting them in the right space. Paranormal Appalachian, it was just a lot bigger book. But I had to logically figure from one part where the Appalachian Trail starts in maybe Georgia up to Maine, how I would go it, and set it around to where it followed. So now I don't know.
On your fiction stuff, do you see yourself as more of a pantser or a plotter?
At this point, I'm probably more kind of a pantser, but I'm not. I do write things down. I don't think anybody should sit there and depend on, I mean, you can write it through. I mean, everything's written through, but I write down when I get to a person, and I realize I better write down their names, eye color, hair color. It may not come up in it, or at least the names, I don't screw up later when I start doing edits and realize I think I messed up on that name, especially when I have one that was demon names. I use real demon names I'll research and something. And so I'm thinking, I don't think that's the way it spells. So I can go back to my notes and which is online on my computer and look up all that stuff. And a lot of Native American stuff. This new one, Nowhere Land, has a lot of Powhatan. And they're actually doing an audiobook. Actress is asking me, how do you pronounce this? I showed her places I found. I said, this is what it's saying. So I'm assuming what I'm interpreting in my head, that's what they're saying back then. I mean, this is, I think, a language at this point. It's not quite around like it was back when John Smith and all them came here. And so Akcha, if I pronounce his name right, is in it, and he's a ghost. So yeah, you're trying to get stuff like that, and I write those down too. And I got a place where of course I do English to this translations. How do if I want something to say this word and all that, because I want to try and make a little, I mean, not saying that sometimes you don't run into spirits that probably listen to us when you investigate, like Ghost Box, but still it'd be nice if they could speak some of that language too, and kind of add a little color to the story. But everything is written down at some point for me. And the last few chapters, if it's a novel, I do write down how I want them, kind of an outline toward the end. It will, and the ending's already been written, but by the time I get to it, it may have more added to it, may change a bit, depends how my brain, I just let it come out. It's like I explain to people, it's like a colored movie hits my head, and I see the whole thing, literally, and I can't stop. And that's the way it goes. Like my editor thought this, because I have 3 trilogy coming. Well, I have the first one, Demon Memories. It's a YA dark fantasy. And there will be 2 others. I'm writing the second one now. But she thought, oh, this was the one end, the horror one. I said, no, you read the book. You know what it's like. You edited it. There is a proof in there that can continue a pretty good series out of it. And it's not your ghost and it's not your demon. That's all I'm going to say, because I want people not to, I know people don't want spoilers, so let them find what it is, and it will fit more books. And so I already started writing because my head went crazy, and it's like an off book. It's not part of the series, completely the series, part of the 2 characters in this one. But there are characters in that one that will have characters that end up in the second one. So, and it's got psychic people, dark soul, dark power, dark soul. So they'll continue on with anything to do with this whole theme of what it is. And if you read Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson and Stranger Things, both themes fit.
Gotcha.
I didn't want a haunted house. I mean, I thought when I was going to, there's lots of haunted houses. And I thought a haunted land. And the funny thing is, it kept running through my head. He's a nowhere land, living in his nowhere land. The whole thing. And I thought, okay. And at first it was Nowhere Town, but no, that doesn't right. And that song kept coming through. I said, Nowhere Land. So
that's your latest one that's coming out.
Yep.
So what's the release date on it?
October 7th. It's up for pre-order and it's been selling.
Nice. And so October 7th, which I know this episode will probably come out after that. So by the time this episode comes out, then, Nowhere Land will be available. So, people can, go and check it out. But let's see, what do you find is the most difficult part of writing a book?
Well, hopefully, sometimes you might stop. I don't get blocked, but I may get stopped somewhere where I have to figure something out. But generally, I have figured it out. And if I'm really interested, the book will finish. And anyway, it takes 3 or 4 edits, and you may find that your own brain that you thought that you didn't do the first time. And that's the whole thing. I think people stop and they want to add something. And I've been in writing critique groups to see this a lot. And some people bring in same chapter several times. I figured by this point, and I took an advice of a well-known at the time who wrote hard-boiled detective novels. He said, just write it out. It's not going to be perfect. It isn't. But if you can get it out and then leave it alone and go back, start the edits, you might be surprised. I thought at that point, wasn't sure that Demon Memories was going to be perfect. And I ended up liking it. So I went through it. Nowhere Land. actually liked it in the edit. So I thought this is the kind of book I would read. It doesn't start out perfect. I have another one. She's bringing out my old Sapphire stuff, and I said, "Oh, I got this werewolf one that would fit this, make it and put these novellas into one book." And the two were out were Werelion and Wereleopard, and I thought, "What's this?" And I found out I did finish the werewolf one. So yeah, it's just write it out, and you can go back. And one thing about that, having that already finished and looking through the book, I was surprising it wasn't that bad. So I know that going through the edits will just fine-tuned it. But yeah, write it out. Don't sit there and some people do that, and they'll never get off the ground. You can always fix it.
Yeah, that's something I've heard a lot is definitely just as you're going through, just get to the end and don't, because if you're trying to constantly, almost like constantly sharpen as you're going, you'll never get to the end if you keep trying to go back and edit the same 3 or 4 chapters over and over. Because even now, I mean, stuff that I've published and I've gone back and read, I'm like, I should have said that different. I mean, there's always, you can always critique and try to kind of resharpen your blade, so, but you need to just get it onto the page so that way it's at least out.
And then put it away for at least maybe a month. So it's like it's forgotten. Just get onto something else. That way, when you see it, it's so fresh. You're going, okay, this isn't bad. I thought it was, but I was wrong. Or yeah, I can fix this, and you'll flesh it out more too. Because I'm just logic anyway. Oh, this doesn't work. This should be switched over the chapter. This piece should be over here because logically this would happen in real life. I'm that kind of way. So put it logically.
So of all the books that you've written, what would you say is your favorite?
I'd be asking like, what was my favorite child? I only had one son.
So I've had that question compared to that before. It's like, yes, it's like picking my favorite kid.
Lately, Nowhere Land has really got me excited. And like I said, when I was doing the edits from my editor, that I suddenly realized, and I thought, did I write that? That's a quotable quote, they call them in Goodreads. I looked up my old manuscript because I was starting to change everything that she suggested onto that one and realized those were my quotable quotes. I said, my gosh, this is like the kind of book I want to read, so yeah, that one's, and it's got me excited about as a series. So
awesome. Let's see. So do you ever go back and read your book reviews? And if so, how do you handle the negative ones?
Number one, I just figure it could be anybody. I mean, it could be that wasn't their taste. It could be a jealous reader of another writer. I can tell you stories. I already know that for my ghost books. I've had one where they wrote to the publisher, one of my ghost books, the one that's the best-selling one, second. And the only reason I know that she screwed up, because they don't know. They're in Pennsylvania. They don't know anything what's in Virginia, how long it takes to get from one place to another. So I knew she lived up in Hanover County, which is up by Ashland. She lived. I live in Chesterfield. I know how hard it is from both ways to get to Williamsburg and how much time on the highway and everything. And she said it only took her half an hour from there. No, it doesn't. It's an hour. So was she out to cause bad trouble? I don't know. I don't know her. I mean, who knows? At some point, you get those too. And you got to learn not to just fluff it out. I mean, there's going to be bad reviews or there are going to be bad ratings. I mean, Werewolf had a couple of 1 stars. Everybody else has got more, but their ratings, I don't know why, how. I mean, there's no, to me, it's when we started having Amazon giving reviews, everybody doesn't, because someone asks, why doesn't people leave enough reviews? Well, number one, a lot of them don't know how to write it. They're not reviewers, they're readers or whatever they are. Though Amazon now has a thing that they can fill out, I think, makes it a little bit easier, or at least allow them to write a couple of lines instead of, that's what they can do. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons. If you let that drive you, then you'll go crazy. And
so true.
Reviews are one thing people want, but they want other different things too in a book. So you have to think everything positively.
So let's see. So I started the Night Crew podcast as a spinoff to my own series, The Night Crew, which is about a team of monster hunters. And all of my scripted episodes are deep dives into some kind of a creature. So with that being said, one of the caveats of coming on the podcast is you've got to talk about your favorite monster. So what is your favorite horror monster?
Werewolves, shapeshifters, werewolves, and wereleopards. I like
Werewolves and
shapeshifters. That's why I
wereleopards.
wrote the book. And werewolves, you can count dogmen now too, because they look like them. Just because they don't change shape, that anybody's doesn't mean anything. So yeah, they've been. I bought a couple of werewolf horror books just the other day. Yeah, I like ghost stories too, but I like werewolf. I'd have no idea since I was a kid.
So why werewolves?
I don't know, just something powerful about being able to change the shape and be able to smell sounds and everything else. I mean, just something about it, and it's like frightening if you watch the movies where the guy's changing shape and it's like crack, and they're moving their bodies, and the people might see that while they're watching it, or it's just something about werewolves. I mean, everybody likes vampires, but it's been werewolves for me, so.
Well, and I know, even today, it's been years since the last time I watched it, but I still remember the transformations on like An American Werewolf in London, or, the Howling, when, in some of that special effects, it really still lives up today. And, they did some good jobs and some good practical effects in the movies to, show those transformations.
Yeah, they have a lot of good ones out there.
Yeah.
Another favorite, Dog Soldiers, so.
Well, that is a good one too. So from a book standpoint, so what's your favorite werewolf books?
Believe it or not, because it's so different, and it's the paperbacks are out of print, so you're going to pay an awful price. I have no idea why they're charging. At least they got it. Whitley Strieber to sign it. I don't know any other reason why. But he does have them out in paper ebooks now. At least on Kindle, I've seen it. The Wolfen. And I really liked that. It was '70s, late '70s. I got the book. I was in college reading it, and I really liked it because it was not your usual werewolf. They were almost like dogmen before, I guess. Well, even though we know dogmen in Michigan and all that, but a lot of people didn't know that. And he said it in New York City, and they were like same race. They were race like us, but differently. They were more canine, and they lived with us. But now they got to the cities, and then we get the homeless and things like that to eat. So they didn't change shape, but they were like an intelligent species. And I kind of like that. Was different. Nobody thought of that before, other than the shape-shifting one, which now we have the dogman. That's almost saying that, right? And so, that was my favorite. They did a movie, and I went to see it in the theaters. I was disappointed. It was good, but it was the 80s and close to the 70s, and everything was Native. I'm Native American in me, but it was Native American stuff. And they're talking about skinwalkers, and they turn Indians into werewolves, but that's not what they were in the book. And I like the book's idea because it was different. So I don't know why they did that, and maybe they just couldn't have that many able to walk on hind leg wolfish things or not. I don't know at that time. Or maybe just somebody decided he wanted that kind and they bought the rights. And it's like some of these movies that don't seem like to fit with the book. The only thing that had fit with the book was the two detectives, and it was New York City. So, but it's good. I like that. He did do a traditional werewolf one. I found that. He does have one of the wants to read a traditional werewolf book of his, but that one was different and I liked it. So they kind of outdid it better than me than normal. So, and all that.
So you use the word werewolf, but then also dogman. So for those listening, what would you see as the difference between werewolf versus dogman?
I don't think there's a difference. Dogmen hunters, I know people that do this. It's because I got a short snout. Excuse me, my Siberian Husky had the same length snout as the timber wolf I took a picture of in the book. I said, they don't have it, unless you're counting a bulldog. And now that science has proven all our dogs are descended from two different wolves in prehistory. One was Asian. I'm trying to remember what the other one was they mentioned. So, yeah, if you looked at my Siberian, we've been accused we had a wolf in the backyard. No, he was. That's Siberian Husky. He's got papers. He's a wolf in there, But, yeah, so they don't, I don't know what they thought the dog would have a shorter snout, but they don't. It depends on, I guess, if they're thinking bulldog, yeah, but most of them had about the same length snout. So, what my dog did anyway. And so it's kind of cool because it looks like a werewolf. and all the descriptions. So, hey, my idea is if it's really true, since everything is alternate worlds or dimensions with me, that's my favorite. That's all I'm going to say about Nowhere Land too. But anyway, I always kept saying, if you wanted to, people said, oh, where did Bigfoot disappear? How come we don't? Well, we find Footfoot. Well, maybe they're from another dimension, another world. And they can, portals open and they can cross over into ours. Maybe that's where sometimes people disappear. Well, fairies, people disappeared, So, yeah. Good idea, right? Maybe we've been seeing werewolves, but they weren't really werewolves. If you're a primitive person or a medieval person and you see this wolf thing on legs walk past you and it probably doesn't care carrying a deer, you probably thought it was some evil witch probably turning into a monster. And that's my logic anyway. And it makes a good idea for a good book if you think about it too.
So outside of writing, what are your hobbies?
Gosh, right now it's been a lot of writing. I'm going conventions and events, obviously. Well, going to see movies or watching movies, stream a lot. I like to go out to eat with my husband. We have favorite places. We like Mexican and Asian. He cooks, things like that. I like to travel. I've had to travel for the ghost books anyway and been to some places. And I've been this year, went to StokerCon. So I was in Connecticut. We traveled for the first time in our new hybrid. So the Camry actually used a lot of electric more than gas, which is nice to save money. Yeah, so I was up to Connecticut. I wanted to stop because I saw, oh my gosh, it's in the book too. Look, it's where Sleepy Hollow is. My husband said, no, we're not stopping. If you're from here and you've probably seen it. Yeah, well, I've been to it. I don't care if I haven't. I want to see Sleepy Hollow someday.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to go to StokerCon, but I've gone to a number of other conventions. Some of the AuthorCon. I was at TBRCon this past weekend, and so I've done a number of other ones. I had some friends who were at StokerCon, but I didn't get a chance to go myself. So and I doubt I'm gonna go next year. I'm kind of tapped out on different conventions to go to. My wife only gives me so much of a budget to travel.
Yeah,
so
I spend whatever if we have leftover income tax for that. I already got anyway. 2 of them I'm a guest, and they're local anyway, so it's not that hard. And I'm doing AuthorCon in Williamsburg, so that's easy. And then I sell well. And I'm doing and I'm doing it because my publisher's doing it. She went and got paid for it. Says, would you like to share a table with me here and do this? I actually sold really well when they did it in August, which was the worst time to do it. They're doing it in March, I guess, in Fredericksburg. Gothic Market, which is part of Grimoire Academy. It's a lot of vendor stuff, but they get a lot of people. They sold 5,000 tickets the first day, Saturday. 5,000 people were in there because I've been to Dragon Con. Yeah. And unfortunately, it was August and hot out there, 100-degree weather, humid. And I think they tried to open, or maybe they left something open for in and out all that people, but it was hot in there. And but I sold a lot of books. And then the second day was 1,500 people. So as long as they're doing it, they got them from all over. They go across the country. So it costs, but you know what? I made my money back for that, plus quite a bit extra. So, but I'm going to sit with her, and that's fine. I'll sign my books there and stuff. And she said I could sell my ghost books done in the house that are not her. But there's that, and I know there'll be other things coming up. I applied. I'm trying as much as I can local. I know that my husband would rather have me local, not to go so far. But I told him I have these books now that can go out of it. And Paranormal Appalachian Trail, when it comes out, there are going to be people that are going to ask me from who knows where to come sign, even if it's a bookstore. So we'll see how it goes. I want to try some different places, but I already had somebody from New York ask me. Awesome. I said, no. I think my husband said no. A little hard. They were paying me. It might be a different story, but.
So where is the best place for listeners to learn more about you and your books?
Well, my website, and that's Pamela K. Kinney. It's PamelaKinney.com. And of course, I have a section for fiction and section for nonfiction, so they can look what they want. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Lusky. I'm not on Twitter, but that was a dumpster fire. That's why I dumped off finally. I said it wasn't worth trying to sell there when everybody was fighting each other. So, yeah. And I'd like to try and get TikTok. I still haven't done it yet. I keep thinking more nervous about having to do all those videos, obviously. But yeah, but I am on the other ones. And on Facebook, I'm on my regular one, and then, which is the wall. They used to call it the wall, and then the Facebook page. So, but yeah, my website's the best. It'll have all the books up there. She has all the links. I have a webmaster. I paid someone a long time ago. She's inexpensive, but she's worth it. I give her a Christmas present. She's worth her weight in gold. She gets me to do what I want to do right and not worry about that website.
All right. Well, and I'll make sure and get all the links from you for all your social stuff, and that way we can put those in the show notes. And so then it makes it easier for people to anybody who's listening can go ahead and find any of your information in the show notes. So it'll make it nice and easy for them. So with that, I think that's pretty much it. So I thank you for being on the a guest on the podcast, and I really appreciate it. Everybody look for, by the time this episode comes out, Nowhere Land will be already released. So hop on Amazon, go pick yourself up a copy, and other than that, I really appreciate you hanging out and chatting with me for a little while.
No problem. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
That's it for the Night Crew podcast and my conversation with Pamela K. Kinney. I have links to where you can find Pamela in the show notes. Follow her on all the socials and pick up her books. So, if you had a good time, make sure to follow the show, share it with a friend, and leave a rating, hopefully 5 stars. If you want updates on my writing, you can follow me on Facebook or TikTok at BradRicksAuthor. You can find copies of my novels wherever you like to buy books. But if you hop over to my website, bradricks.com, you can purchase signed copies of any of my novels. While there, also sign up for my newsletter. Remember, Night Crew Book 1 is currently available, and Book 2 comes out November 14th. I'm Brad Ricks, reminding you to stay out of graveyards after dark, question people who don't show up in mirrors, and remember that not all horror is fiction. Until next time, keep your curtains drawn, your sense of humor sharp, and your blood inside your body. Thanks for listening.